Bam! MC is in the house. What's up, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I'm here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and taking a topic and deep diving, having a good time while doing it. Have a pretty good show planned for you guys today. I will say that it took me about 3 hours to prepare for this presentation today, right? This show today, and almost 2 hours of which was on the fucking thumbnail. So please appreciate the thumbnail. I wish there was somewhere on like YouTube and Facebook where you could just like the thumbnail. But oh man, I was wrapped up in an obsession of getting this thing right. And I don't even know if it wound up being right. I was happy with the result. I wanted it to be obviously representative of what was going on, what I'm going to be talking about, but also wanted it to be a little funny in nature. I like to add a little humor to things. But that being said, before we get into things, you could see it here on the screen, masterchimletter.com. If you're not getting my emails, I send one out every morning. It is free. I take various topics that I usually tend to talk about and sometimes deep dive, just give you a little bit of insight on what's going on with me. There's always a quote of the day attached to that people seem to enjoy. So definitely check that out, masterchimletter.com. So let's see what is going on. Who's here? We have my man Jesse in the house. What's up, brother, man? Good to see you. Judge Cohen, my man. Good to see you. What do we got? Aaron. What's up, Aaron? What does she write? She writes, MC, you have not sent an email the last couple of days. So here's the thing. These fucking email service providers, Gmail, Hotmail, or I don't know, I use Gmail, all the other ones that are there. This has been going on for everybody, including me, my own emails. Now, they haven't been going in, I'm going to speak in terms of Gmail. I don't know what the equivalents are on other platforms, but they haven't been in spam in my Gmail. But what they are is in when I search all mail, they appear there. So from there, I send them to the inbox. So they're not getting, it's like they're in purgatory or some shit. Like, I don't even know what the hell's going on, but I'm sending one every day. I have not missed a day in years at this point. So if you're not getting it, it's because it has either not been sent to you, or it's in your spam, or it's in one of those general all mail folders. So definitely check that out. But it happened to me too. And, you know, I appreciate you bringing that up here as a reminder, but I'm sending them, right? I'm sending them. Jamie, what's up, brother, man? Good to see you. It'd be messed up if Jamie was getting them and you're not. Right? Johnny Groove in the house. What's up, brother, man? Good to see you. Yeah, so definitely check that out with the emails. All right, so today what I have planned, man, I had to wrap my head around exactly how I wanted to talk about this because number one, like I don't want to get sued. I don't want to get sued. If I was sued, it wouldn't be the fucking first time, you know, but I tend to speak a little directly, you know, and sometimes it's offensive to people. And there's just a consequence for living in the aquarium, I guess. You know, I could sit here and, you know, be one of those guys that says, I don't give a fuck if anybody sues me. I'm going to say, well, it's like, well, you know what? I give a little bit of a fuck because I got shit to do and I can't spend time dealing with these hurt motherfuckers. But I saw an interview yesterday. I don't know if it was dropped yesterday, but I saw yesterday, and I'm going to give you just a screenshot of the interview. And this is the Ariel Helwani show. This is Ariel Helwani, and he had on a guy, Derek Moneyberg, who, if you are not familiar with this like controversy or drama, more of a dramedy to me, if I had to be honest. Basically, all right, so Ariel Helwani is an MMA journalist. I don't think he's ever trained in martial arts or anything. He certainly doesn't carry himself as somebody who has trained martial arts. He has affinity for, bobbleheads and things like that. But he is one of the more prominent, popular MMA journalists. I think he got thrown out of the UFC, like he's not allowed to go there anymore, because I think he fucked Dana White over. Don't quote me on that. I don't know, but there was some thing where I think he fucked over Dana White, and Dana White was like, yeah, you're not allowed here anymore. But this is his show, and he's got the who's who. Like if you're a guy in the MMA world that's looking to push something, promote something, like getting on Ariel's show is definitely a step in the right direction, publicity-wise, marketing-wise. Ariel Helwani has always been very, to me, like I've been very indifferent to him. Like I don't really care either way prior to seeing this interview, that is. Just a little full disclosure, he is going to be the target of much of my ire today. Right now, who he has here is Derek Moneyberg. Now, Derek Moneyberg I've never met him, right? I know a bunch of people that have done business with him, or that's not even a fair way to say it. I know some of the fighters that know him, that he's worked with. I know Jake Shields, who gave Derek Moneyberg his black belt, which is at the epicenter of all the controversy around him. I don't know Jake Shields very well. Jake Shields and I have competed, I think, in a couple of tournaments together. We've spoken on occasion, but we're not like buddies or anything like that. But again, like I lean towards, ally when it comes to Jake Shields. I haven't had anything to do with Jake Shields in, I don't know, fucking 20 years at this point. But, I was always friendly with him. We were cool. But so we're not like really close friends. In other words, I don't have a horse in this race, right? I would contend that. Some people, just with what I said, might disagree, but that's my take on it. Now, having said that, Derek Moneyberg is, and I don't know him, right? I think I said that, but just to say it again, I don't know who he is. He's a fucking weirdo, all right? He looks weird. He speaks weirdly. He is in the whole make money, self-help space. I have overlap with that space, so I ain't mad at him. But he is an unusual, eccentric guy, right? Normally, we would just say weird, but White Boy Pat back in the day corrected me. He said, no, when you have money, you are not weird, you are eccentric, right? So to give White Boy Pat credit, shout out White Boy Pat. So Derek Moneyberg is eccentric as fuck. The way he conducts himself is very calculated. He has a very almost spectrified effect to him, to his persona. All that being said, like, I don't have anything against I just listed for him. Like, none of that to me is like, and that's why I don't like him. It is literally just a description, how I see it, of who he is from afar. The major point of contention was that Moneyberg got his black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Jake Shields in like a little over 3.5 years, which is very, very quick when compared to the average time it takes somebody to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got my black belt in 6 years, which is also quick compared to the average time it takes people to get a black belt. But here's the thing about the way I look at the black belt, right? And I don't want to sort of go over things. I got like a whole fucking thing planned, right? So we're going to get into that, but not to steal some of that thunder that I have planned for later. I have always contended that a black belt or belt promotion in general, not only is it usually unnecessary, right, in terms of the objectives of what I would say martial arts training is. I consider myself to be a martial artist. I consider myself to be somebody who lives that lifestyle. The name of my company is Warrior Lifestyle, right? So this is something different to me than it is to most people who practice martial arts. So, and I understand that bias. But when you have a guy like, I'm getting ahead of myself, when you have a belt promotion, it is between an instructor and the student. I would say scaling outward from there, it is about the tribe in the martial arts community, that specific community. Again, community is not this thing that people talk about on the internet, the jiu-jitsu community. Like, no, there's a jiu-jitsu culture that is prominent in many martial arts communities, meaning individual schools, right? But there is no community. This is all, at some point it gets into this Marxist, we're all one bullshit. But a martial arts promotion has nothing to do with anybody than the martial arts family in which the promotion is given. Jake Shields awarded Derek Moneyberg a black belt. Full stop. That's it. I would tell you right now, I've been a black belt almost 19 years. A black belt almost 19 years. I have created black belts. Whereas every single one of my black belts, I feel deserved a black belt when I gave him the black belt. I cannot sit here and tell you every one of my black belts is going to be an MMA fighter or is going to win in tournaments. I have a criteria for black belt. And at the time, those individuals met that criteria, which is why they were awarded a black belt. If Jake Shields has a criteria, whereas some people, or just as some people would disagree with my criteria for giving a black belt, some people could disagree with Jake Shields' criteria for giving a black belt. But if I saw that one of my black belts was getting criticized for getting a black belt, the way Moneyberg is for getting one, to me, it would be confusing as to why somebody would say that the student is responsible for what may be considered an undeserved black belt promotion. Not that their opinion is qualified or relevant, but if that's their point of contention, why would they go to the student? Right? It just doesn't make sense. So I would say it's not consistently, logical. It makes sense because you understand the ulterior motives and whatnot, which we'll get into, but it just doesn't make sense. So right now, the internet is all a buzz, and I understand I'm influenced somewhat by the algorithm and what I'm exposed to online. There's some people who've never even heard of this, and I made sure that the points that I have planned to go over don't rely on a general understanding of this situation or even martial arts promotions in general. But I named this talk, Every Herd Has a Hero. And the hero of the herd, for this episode, conversation at least, is going to be Ariel Helwani. Right? So I prepared, 14 points? 14 points to go over. And I had ChatGPT make slides and everything. So I'm moving on up. There's just something to be said for an individual's understanding of who you are to the point where you aren't susceptible to the buzzes of the herd around you. I see so many people jumping on this guy's case, this Derek Moneyberg guy, because, like I said before, he looks like a weirdo, He looks like a fucking very smart guy. He looks like a nice enough guy. He seems super respectful. I think a lot of people just look at him as somebody who hasn't paid the dues that they did, and there's that resentment that is there because of it. Right? So I created this presentation. If you guys have questions and stuff, do me a favor, just write them in the chat there. I'll try and hit them all. Right now I'm streaming on, as usual, YouTube and a couple of Facebook pages. So I don't want to miss any questions you guys have. But let's get this thing popping. All right. So I'm going to do it this way. Should I do it that way? Yeah, let's do it this way. If you guys can't read, don't worry. I'm going to read it for you. But there are 14 points. And here is the thing that I'm basically calling these slides or these points why Ariel Helwani is advocating for the slave's mindset in this particular situation. And I guess that's, I never titled these points, but I guess in context, that's something that makes sense. So the number one point, he needs other people to confirm what's real. If the crowd doesn't recognize it, he doesn't believe it. His sense of truth depends on how many people agree. Helwani, during the interview, repeatedly framed the legitimacy of a black belt as a combination of public approval and sort of competition outcomes. A quote from the interview: "No one has ever received a black belt in jiu-jitsu without competing in events. So you can surely understand why there's some questions surrounding the legitimacy of your black belt." So him asking that kind of a question completely disregards the legitimacy or authority of Jake Shields to give the black belt. Nowhere in his question is it reflected that Jake Shields is the one that has the authority to give a black belt. And again, all of this is fucking gay. Like, let me just take a step back for a second. Like, even me, like, I'm feeling fucking dirty that I'm arguing, the rules of promotion and who's qualified. All I'm saying is this is the fucking way it is. Ariel Helwani has no fucking idea about this. And so he's commenting on this from a perspective that's not even qualified to criticize. A phrase that I use is he's showing up with more answers than questions. And he's just not qualified to do so. So him needing other people to sort of validate the legitimacy. In other words, he needs the crowd to validate the legitimacy of the black belt promotion. It completely just goes against not only the established processes that are in place, but also it begs the question, who the fuck is he to have an opinion to criticize whether this is done accurately or not accurately? The irony of this all is, Ariel winds up spending, I don't know, it's like an hour, it might be a little over an hour, interrogating Moneyberg, like really being fucking disrespectful. He's being a dick. The irony, I would say, is Moneyberg would beat the shit out of Helwani. So it's like, remember those old wrestling clips where, who was it? Was it some journalist got the shit slapped out of him by a wrestler because he put the mic in the wrestler's face? It was like, it thinks it's fake, and the wrestler says it's fake and slaps the shit out of him. Oh, I forget who it was, but it's like the whole time I'm watching this interview, I'm like, that would be fucking hilarious. Obviously, Derek Moneyberg is not going to slap the shit out of Ariel Helwani because, I'm pretty sure he's got lawyers and understands that side of the society. But, oh man, would that have been poetically justified? So, that this point of, he needs other people to confirm what's real, it really just speaks to just the appeal to the herd and how morality tends to be influenced by what's acceptable. And not so much even by what's acceptable, but the second order effect of that, what gets you accepted, right? So I think, to be honest, and I don't know Ariel Helwani, I never met him. And like I said, I was indifferent to him prior to this for the most part. And even with this, like, I don't hate the fucking guy. I think he is what you look at. He is what you think he is. He's a little weasel. He's not somebody that does this or is about this life or anything. He's somebody that's latched on and made a career out of, having an opinion, which whatever, that's fine. But I know that he's somebody that will never understand the majority of things that he had these strong opinions about during that talk, right? So let's move on. So number 2, he cares more about following rules than producing results. He worships the process. If you didn't do it the right way, he thinks it doesn't count, even if it actually works better. So now, what do I mean here? There's a point where he starts obsessing over the timelines and the protocols of what the belt promotions are supposed to be. And this is a quote. He has 3.5 years as a mid-40-year-old. You can surely understand why that rings some alarms, right? Now, throughout the conversation, he seems to be trying to get Moneyberg to sort of expose himself, in some way, with these sort of, leading questions. And that, I don't think this is an unfair question. But again, I'm speaking about the context that is supporting this question in his mind, the paradigm that he has, which is that the rules are more important than the results. It's like, well, it only took you 3.5 years, so you could understand why people are skeptical. It's like, well, no, actually. I think that there is a criteria for getting a black belt, and none of that criteria is based on the amount of time that you have to be training. Now, here's a little pushback on my own point that I just made. In the IBJJF, they do, if I'm not mistaken, have these sort of milestones along the timeline of a practitioner to where they're capable or qualified or eligible to be promoted to the next rank. That is completely for the sport as regulated by the IBJJF. The IBJJF also doesn't recognize, I read an article recently, Hoist Gracie's rank, I think. Eric Paulson, I think, was in the article, his rank. I've trained with Hoist Gracie. My jiu-jitsu lineage is through Hoist Gracie. Eric Paulson, I've trained with, who's like one of the OG American practitioners, like one of the most knowledgeable instructors on the planet, when it comes to this. But the IBJJF doesn't recognize their ranks. And a lot of people are like, can you believe that they don't? And my whole thing is, no, let's believe it. And let's just let this be further proof that is different from this. So this whole expectation that a timeline's supposed to take place in between belts, who the fuck made that rule? So his a little over 3.5 years, that's what BJ Penn was like 3 years. And like, understand that there are people who have taken 20 years to get a black belt. If you're arguing against somebody getting it early, then why wouldn't you also argue against somebody getting it extremely late? It's like if it took this guy 20 years to be a black belt, when it's supposed to take 10, right? Because that's usually the consensus. Some people say 8 to 10, some people say 10 to 12. It's all pulled out of their ass, but around 10 is usually the number. Well, if it takes somebody 20, maybe we should make an argument that, hey, maybe this guy isn't made to be a black belt if it's taken him so long. Maybe we have to revisit, why somebody would get it at 20 years. Why did it take so long? Because it's the same argument. In other words, we're ignoring the criteria of the instructor. We're ignoring what the instructor wanted to see in his student before awarding this rank. It's just on the opposite end of it. But people will be less inclined to do that. It's like, in order to get 3.5 years, he has to be a prodigy. It literally was BJ Penn's fight nickname. What does that mean if he gets it at 20 years? Is he a retard? Do we say that? It's like, no, he's not a prodigy. Prodigy is not the rank, and that's what people don't fucking understand. BJ Penn was not a prodigy because he's got his black belt in 3 years. BJ Penn was a prodigy because he won the fucking Moonjals in 3 years. He won the black belt world championships in 3 years. That's why he's a fucking prodigy. Not because he got a black belt. It's because he was the best on the planet. It's not rules and rank. It's results, outcomes. Moneyberg himself will say, I'm not some championship level competitor. I'm not a professional fighter. And again, I don't know Moneyberg. Right? Like it's almost like I feel like I'm watching this show, The Practice, about all the lawyers back. It's like back in the 90s. I got to watch old shows, less tranny and gay shit, even though there's some gay shit in that. But anyway, I digress. But one of the things that a lot of the lawyers have to do is on the show is like they're appointed, cases. It's like, hey, what are you doing right now? Yeah, you're this guy's lawyer. Go. And it's like court appointed, defense. I almost feel court appointed here. Now, again, I'm not against Moneyberg. It's just that, like, I'm not his lawyer, even though I feel like I'm defending his position. It's really, I just want to counter and push back against the weakness and the slave mindset that Ariel Helwani was representing in this talk, right? So that's number 2. I got a bunch of them. I got to start moving, right? So number 3, he assumes that anything private must be suspicious. If success happens out of public view, he believes it's fake. He can't imagine quiet work being legitimate. So where's the quote that I found? All right, he was questioning all the training done in private without any public footage or tournament footage, etc. And the quote is, behind closed doors, though, right? So no one's able to see this. And this is the assumption that he's making, that, or the implication, the inference, that because this happened behind closed doors, somehow it speaks to some conspiratorial nature of the promotion. The premise that he's working from obviously being, well, everybody knows that it's supposed to happen in full public view. So you're doing something different than what you're supposed to do. When obviously that's not the fucking case. Most promotions happen in the fucking school, happen between the student and the teacher. My last promotion, I got over a phone call. It's like, hey, yeah, just put another thing on your belt. Yeah. It's like, thanks. I'll talk to you later. Who the fuck has anything to say about any of this? I'm a 3rd degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My instructor, Rob Kahn, my first couple of ranks, I didn't even get promoted from Rob, even though I considered him my instructor. The reason I couldn't get my belts from him is because he wasn't a black belt. So I got my blue belt from Helson Gracie. I got my purple belt from Phil Miglaris and Balance down in Philly. Shout out to Phil. And then finally, while having my purple belt, Rob got his black belt, and then I got my brown, my black, and all the other ones. None of my belts followed the same criteria. Now, a little bit different, obviously, I was a professional fighter. I've competed a bunch. Like, I have a good reputation. I've produced, successful competitors. But as far as the actual ceremony, the rituals of getting promoted, there was no set criteria. But every single time it was somebody who was a black belt saying, I'm going to promote you to a black belt. I once had a guy, a former student, who wanted a brown belt. And this guy trained with me for over 10 years at this point. And he said he thought he deserved a brown belt. And I said, if I thought he deserved a brown belt, he'd have a brown belt. And then he said, I'm paraphrasing, remembering it's a few years back. Well, there are other schools where the instructors have said that I should be a brown belt. To which my reply was, well, I guess you should go to those schools and get a brown belt then. Like, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. But to me, and I've had many students over the years quit because they weren't promoted quickly enough. To me, it's like, they say they're born that way. Like, I can't fucking change that. If this is how you look at life, Like, there's only so much I can do, but I have a fucking criteria. And if you don't meet the criteria, you go. But now, mind you, where this point is concerned, none of this is obligated to be had in sort of public view. Like, well, what does the community say about it? Like, that's fucking gay. It's terrible. Right? So, number 3, he assumes that anything private must be suspicious. So what's the next point? Number 4, he thinks paying for expert help means you cheated. Oh, this is a fucking good one, right? So he was implying that, paying the top fighters that he was, because if you guys look, like, Moneyberg's had like the who's who, like including Hoist Gracie, including Gordon Ryan, a lot of big names on his podcast, and even Jake Shields, former UFC fighter, etc. And he implies somehow that paying these fighters like questions the legitimacy, right? And I'll share a quote before I get into it. He goes, and this is a Helwani quote from the show: "Would it be unfair to hypothesize that Jake Shields gave you a black belt just because you pay him very well?" Like, there are certain situations where saying something like that would get punched in the face. By Jake Shields, by the way. Maybe by the student, but embedded in that question is such a level of disrespect. It's an integrity, charge, where he's questioning his integrity and his word. If I go and, for those of you that have college degrees, I don't have college degrees. If you have a college degree, they're like, was college free? Or did you pay for it? Did the fact that you had to pay for it delegitimize the certificate or degree that you got as a result of it? What the fuck does paying have to do with it? So again, the quote: "Would it be unfair to hypothesize that Jake gave you a black belt just because you pay him very well?" It would imply that there was a financial incentive to give him a black belt beyond any financial incentive that existed prior. In other words, I'm going to pay you for privates, but if you don't give me a black belt, I'm not going to pay you for privates anymore. I'm going to pay you for privates, but if you give me a black belt, I'll give you more money because you gave me a black belt. It would be implying that. And listen, it's a fair question. Would it be fair to hypothesize that? Well, based on, again, what criteria do you have to suggest that Jake Shields would sell black belts? And again, what the fuck does this have to do with Moneyberg? Because he can't force Jake Shields to do shit. So paying for expert help, somehow saying or suggesting that means that you've cheated or that it questions the legitimacy. It's inconsistent. We have too many models of people who pay for mentorship. Are they undeserving of the outcomes of that mentorship? Right? Even if the outcome is some sort of certification of the mentorship. But I digress. Number 5, he obsesses over appearances instead of outcomes. He notices details that don't matter because he's uncomfortable measuring performance that does. So where's his quote? All right. So one thing that's been brought up is that you are often on the mats wearing socks. Why is that? So now, again, is it unusual to wear socks when training? Yeah, of course. Is it unheard of? Of course not. Does it mean if you wear socks, you're not a black belt? Of course not. Does it imply maybe that you're a little soft? Maybe. That would be more aligned with, you're wearing socks. I think Moneyberg said something like, well, in the compound where he trains, like he's got like marble floors or something, and it's freezing, the floors are freezing. So he has socks on and he just keeps wearing them while he's, training. I once had a guy, one of my training partners, used to wear socks. Shout out to my man Oscar. We were white belts at the same time. And he used to wear socks when he was training, but we were white belts. So I guess nobody really busted his balls because he was a white belt. He used to wear socks. At some point, I took it upon myself. I was a fucking asshole, admittedly. That it was like it was soft. It was almost disrespectful to the room that this guy's rolling with socks on. So I wound up taking the socks off him and rolling with him and choking him with one of his socks. And I was like, if you're wearing socks, I might as well be able to use them. I said something like that. Oh, I was such a dick. I apologize again, Oscar, if you're watching. This is 25 years later. But he then showed me that the reason he wore socks, I'm exposing Oscar right here. I didn't think this through. Fuck it. Nobody knows who Oscar is. The reason he wore socks is because he had webbed toes. I'm not making this up. He had like fucking Aquaman feet. And he's like, so to which of course I just owned it and was like, so what are you gonna fucking wear socks? Like, what are you gonna make sure nobody ever finds out you got webbed toes? And I went, hey guys, Oscar wears socks because he has webbed toes. I was like, see, everybody knows now. Stop with the fucking socks. But here's the thing, it's like people have their reasons for doing shit. Like I've taught seminars where I'm teaching jujitsu moves, but we're in a fucking field and everybody's wearing jeans, fucking shirts. They have shoes or boots on, and we're rolling in the grass with gravel and rocks. And it's like, this is not the thing. If you're building a case, sure, throw the fact that he wears socks on the top. And I get that. But to just spotlight that one criticism, like that's not a make it or break it thing. The guy's a fucking rich guy that has superstars fly to his fucking compound and train with them. Is that persona going to be more likely to wear socks when he trains? Yeah. The people that are getting paid to train him, are they going to go, you can't wear socks when we're training? No, because that's not really a fucking thing that anybody cares about. It's more a thing that you could bust somebody's balls about. There's a point where it's a liability when you're training, like we're talking about, takedowns and stuff, obviously. But like having socks on, it's eccentric. It's not disqualifying, right? So number 6, he attacks the person when he can't attack the facts. When he can't win the argument, he switches to gossip. He digs into your past instead of debating your results. Now, again, I might have said this before, but Moneyberg was super respectful and super accommodating. I have a feeling it's probably more his demeanor. That's how he conducts himself. Not like me at all. I would have been much more volatile in that situation than Moneyberg. But there is a point where Helwani started bringing up his past and like what he was doing, and he was in like the dating space, like the hookup space, I guess, what you fucking call it. And somehow that all this stuff started becoming relevant, right? He had some issues by, I think he was sued or he had gotten arrested too. Like, and you guys have been around my stuff for a long time. I ain't going to be a judge of anybody getting fucking arrested. I was locked up and in prison at 16 years old. But the idea of it is, he started losing the momentum, criticizing the ranks. And at some point just then, and I don't know if it was a counter to losing, but it was just like, let me just try and destroy this Moneyberg guy on my show. But he went into the guy's past and some of the things that happened to him, right? So he started asking about his criminal history and like family estrangements, like being separated from people. I think he's got a son, and he brought up the son and was like, you don't talk to this son. It's like, oh man, these are like landmines with fucking people, dude. And Helwani was just, this safe fucking cunty energy of he's just going to be as disrespectful as he wants, knowing that Moneyberg's not going to fucking do anything to him for it, right? A quote that Helwani had to Moneyberg in the talk: "You've had a few run-ins with the law, right? Why don't you talk much to your son?" Derek's response to that was, Moneyberg's response was to, he basically, dealt with it. He undermined, I'd say the credibility of the criticism. And for Ariel to just then revert to this sort of this moral, high ground, this moral posturing, it's like what's the meat on the bone of this criticism that what he had some run-ins with the law at one point. They're arguing, just like the semantics, acknowledging run-in law with not having a run-in with the law, like Moneyberg had gotten arrested at one point, but they dropped all the charges because it was unfounded. And Ariel used that, yeah, but you're still like, it's like he was just reaching for, I don't know if it was to make a point or is to get Moneyberg to concede that, yeah, I used to be a piece of shit or something. Like, I don't understand what he was even trying to do, but it wasn't working. And I give credit to Moneyberg. Like, he stayed focused and on point a lot fucking longer than I would have. And I think that most people would have. Because it just became like personal at some point. And it looked like if you would have told me Ariel Helwani is on a mission to destroy this guy's reputation during this interview, and then I watched the interview, I'd be like, yeah, all right, he's being pretty aggressive. He wasn't. Let me just draw a cap on that. Helwani wasn't over the top, almost like legally vulnerable. He didn't challenge, man to man, in any way, Moneyberg during the talk, but he was just being a cunt. I don't know if he is a cunt, but he was definitely acting like a cunt, right? That sort of weaselly energy, right? And let me see what we got here. My man, Eddie. What's up, Eddie? He says, I met Derek back in 2018 before his Moneyberg persona, and he is not to everyone's taste, but he is extremely consistent and congruent. And, here's the thing. I appreciate that feedback. Here's the thing. When I talk about somebody being respectable, I talk about the etymology, the makeup of the word respect. Re and spect. Re meaning it happens over and over again. Spect, to see. To respect somebody is to say that they put forth the same persona, the consistent presentation of who they are. If somebody is consistent in how they conduct themselves, congruent in their positions, they are therefore respectable by my definition of that term. People conflate that with compatible or likable or amenable. And that's not how these terms should be used. If we're used to dealing with people that are outside of our tribes, we understand that we need a level of diplomacy when dealing with them. It's when people don't have those experiences and they've developed their personality under the protection of an artificial environment that they have these sort of dysfunctional, disrespectful, protocols when dealing with other men. I've spoken before that, growing up where I did and how I did, I made alliances with a lot of serious men. And I define a serious man as somebody who has consequences, behind his decisions and his actions. And how you conduct yourself in front of these people has immediate direct consequences. And you're very aware of that when dealing with serious men. When I see somebody like, Ariel Helwani, and again, he's a journalist, so this is inherent something, to some extent in his occupation. But again, it's like you just don't talk to men like that if you have any level of experience with serious people. And I think that was one of the things that was, most significantly off-putting about listening to this. It's like, I'm hoping that Moneyberg gets up and slaps the shit out of him, or at least challenges him. Like, it would be great. I don't think he should have slapped him, obviously, but if it would have been nice. But if Moneyberg was like, well, Ariel, do you think that I would not destroy you in a fight? Like, if he had presented that, immediately Ariel would have been like, oh, but what, I'm not a fighter. Yeah, but you seem to have all these fucking opinions on what's right and what's wrong in this world of martial arts. Yet, when invited to engage in that type of interaction, you talk about how you have nothing to do with it. And it's just that inconsistency. So it's like one might be likable and amenable more than the other, but which one is more respectful, right? Or respectable too, right? All right, next one. Number 7. He treats grown men like helpless children. He believes everyone needs protection from bad decisions. Responsibility scares him, so he tries to regulate others. Where was the quote I got for that? If someone is getting paid well by you, they're going to be incentivized to reward you with great things without checks and balances. So he's talking about these elite fighters and martial artists being so incapable of regulating their own integrity and actions that it is almost predatory for him to pay these people all this money because he can't do it on his own merits. So he has to sort of trap these people as if they're fucking babies, as if they're fucking retards that need handlers or something. And again, it's just like, who the fuck are you talking about here? These are grown fucking men. If they decided, because mind you, it's not like it's just Jake Shields, by the way. He's had Gordon Ryan there. He's had fucking Glover Teixeira there. He's had a whole list of people. I know Glover, right? I used to train with Glover back in the day. Glover is as fucking solid a guy as you're going to get. He's got that sort of Brazilian countryside personality where he's just a good fucking dude. He's not going to, and by the way, he ain't fucking broke. So he's not going to be sitting there selling his fucking integrity and being preyed upon by Derek Moneyberg. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Next one, 8. He thinks credentials mean more than competence. All right, maybe a little redundant to an earlier point, but I didn't want to leave anything unsaid. Where's the quote on this? So there's a certain point in the thing where he starts asking Derek about his authority as a mentor, as a guide, in the business world and stuff. And the question says, he asks, what makes you qualified to be that guy? And there's a point where, like, Derek, I think in response to that says, well, you are here with the show and it's a great show and people, and that's the thing. Moneyberg kept complimenting him. And I understand there's a lot of rapport strategy connected to what he was doing, little NLP, like I get it, but he was still doing it. He was still trying to build rapport, right? That's worth something. And he said, well, Ariel, the reason why you're qualified to do this show is because you do it and people watch it and it's a great show and you're great at what you do. In other words, the proof's in the pudding was his positioning. And then Ariel responds to that, and I don't have the exact quote, but he says something, well, I do this because I went to college and I got a degree in journalism, and that gives me the credentials and qualifications. So it's like, shut the fuck up. It's like, what the... Now, mind you, in Ariel's defense where this is concerned, this is consistent with his, well, who gave you your black belt? That'll follow the rules, the commonly accepted societal rules to get this. But in a vacuum, what a cunty way to fucking respond. And I would say what a short-sighted take on what Moneyberg was trying to share at that moment, which is, like, people pay me to be a coach because when they give me the money, they get the results that they're supposed to get, and they continue to give me the money. Like me, I don't have a college degree. I have many, I'll tell you right now, many coaching clients of mine that make a lot more money than I do. But for some reason, they keep paying me. And what would anybody else surmise the fucking reason is that these people keep paying me? My longest going coaching student right now has been with me, I think, 11 years. 11 years. And each one of those years represents renewal. Like, so how does that happen? This guy's worth a few $1 million, by the way. He's very successful, family man. How does that happen? It happens because it's a return on investment that they trust to be consistent. And that's why they invest this money. So there's a whole world of, of accountability and and meritocracy that completely eludes Helwani. No, you don't have the certificate on your wall. You didn't go and get the class. You didn't get some. I think it's always ironic when somebody's business acumen is questioned because they haven't received a certificate that is given to them by people in an institution where nobody has a business. It's like you didn't get your business degree from the business teacher who doesn't own a business, like from the guy who owns a job and teaches a class about entrepreneurship. It's like the inconsistency is so apparent, and in this talk specifically, it's like yet just another thing where it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And by the way, Helwani is not stupid, very intelligent guy. And I say that because he's smart enough to understand the points that Moneyberg was trying to make. He just rejected them because he was on the attack, right? Number 9, he resents anyone who operates on their own terms. When a man creates his own system, it exposes his dependence. He wants everyone stuck in the same box. So there was a general sentiment of like hostility towards Moneyberg because Moneyberg is eccentric. He doesn't, there's plenty of times, and I give Moneyberg credit. There's plenty of times where Ariel was saying, well, everybody thinks, or, making these sort of implications that, well, their opinion of this, and he was just like, I don't give a shit what people think. I don't give a fuck what they have to say about it. And that's right. And that's a consistent way to be. And you could tell Ariel, either he resented that or he was going to represent a position that represented that, right? So when he was talking about the training that he does and the teaching and positioning is almost like being arrogant and almost deceptive, like implying that it was deceptive. A quote I have from Helwani was, you could understand why people question it, right? And, when we talk about, a slave mindset, right? Nietzsche's slave morality, in the center of it is this idea of resentment, right? This whole, well, this thing that's valuable that I just found out is out of my reach. I suddenly discovered that it's actually not valuable, right? To just try to put it generally. And the resentment isn't something that people with a master's mindset consider. Like they don't define the trajectory of their efforts in any way to accommodate the opinions of the people that resent them for doing it. So there is a certain point where people who have a master's mindset, they can't relate to some of the criticisms they're getting because the criticisms require operating from a premise or a perspective of a slave's mindset. And so if you can't operate from that perspective, it's very hard to then put together and identify or connect with the conclusions that these people come out with. And you see this in how Helwani was conducting himself with Moneyberg. Like Moneyberg is not somebody that conforms. He's unusual. He's eccentric. But it's not something that should in any way accommodate the opinion of spectators. Right? What do we got here? Jamie says, I think the question is less whether he got the certificate, which he did, the black belt, as it is, does he in this case possess the martial value that certificate is supposed to represent? The two, token and competency, should walk hand in hand. And as you expressed, not all brown belts are created equal. You think yours means more than some others would have given your student a brown belt while you wouldn't. I wouldn't agree with this completely. I understand the point you're making. Here's the distinction I'm going to make. I would say there is more an observation of overlap and offset between two sets of criteria than there is a setting on one uniform spectrum of accomplishment or qualification. If you have somebody who is, and you'll see this in the world of jiu-jitsu, where you'll have an instructor give an up-and-coming competitor black belt because he's destroying everybody in the brown belt division. And he gives him a black belt, even though the guy may not have other qualities that some of his other black belts needed to show before they got their black belt. And here's where, we need to think outside the box. It's like a good way to think outside the box is to never get in one in the first place. If we say there should be a set criteria, then we create a scenario where people they teach and they learn to the test. There should be some semblance of ambiguity in what that criteria is, because ultimately the teacher, the circumstance, the student, the dynamic between the three, that's going to evolve over time. Sometimes the brown belt gets the black belt because he's ready to win the black belt world championships. Sometimes the guy that started training when he's 50 gets the black belt at 65 because he's never going to win a tournament. At 65, he might not even be able to defend himself against an attacker in the street. But he's put in the effort. He has the tribal significance and has the respect of the people he's with in that particular community. And he's ingested the material to a level that the instructor thinks he's qualified. And that's the criteria that guy gets the black belt by. So I think really it's, even, the ability to fight, what martial value is in this case. Even in the world of jiu-jitsu, there's complete offset positions. I happen to think that the majority of Brazilian jiu-jitsu world champions, it's going to be very easy for somebody to beat them in a fight in reality. It's not that they can't fight. They're fucking world champions. So let me say this with a little bit more accuracy. If I have a friend of mine who calls me and says, I have a jiu-jitsu world champion outside waiting for me, and he says he's going to beat the shit out of me because he thinks I did something or whatever the case is. What do I do? All right, this is a weird fucking scenario. Just go with it. I'm going to ask him, do you have your pistol on you? Do you have weapons on you? Who's with you? Because this is reality. This is the real world. Single, unarmed, one-on-one fights are duels. Duels only happen within the confines of an alliance. Two people could agree. You guys remember the scene in Troy, right? Where Achilles fought the giant from the other army. That was a duel. The alliance was represented in the agreement between the kings. That is how that was able to happen. They tried that later on in the movie between Achilles and Hector. He thought it was Achilles. It wasn't. But they were going to do the same thing. Let's have a duel so that we don't expose all the death and destruction that would happen without a duel. This is within the confines of an alliance of some sort. If you're walking around the street thinking that you're going to have a one-on-one armed fight with somebody who challenges you to some physical altercation, there are a lot of assumptions you're making. So the point of me even talking about the scenario is what somebody might say is actual martial value wouldn't even be consistent between instructor to instructor. I have black belts that I gave that, the guys sort of went bad, right? Like spoiled milk, maybe I just left them out too long, but over time they went bad. But all my guys will fight. All my guys will fight. None of them are world champions. None of them could even win. Well, none of them. Not all of them could even win a fucking tournament division. But you understand the logic that says they should be able to win a tournament division suggests that everybody else in the division isn't qualified to be a black belt then, right? So you see how that kind of doesn't make sense. So again, I think the safe position to have, and by safe, I mean consistent position, is that an instructor has his criteria. And getting a black belt from that instructor is qualified by that instructor's criteria. If you have a shitty instructor and he gives you a black belt, maybe your black belt is not going to be respected by the community or the communities outside of your community. But is it for them? Now, obviously, Moneyberg is a business guy. He understands how to make money. Being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, getting in the timeline he did, obviously it's very marketable. It's a marketable narrative. I'm not a fucking idiot. I understand that there's an angle to why this benefits him. But all this means is that nobody is going to respect that qualification. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day, but Elvis Presley got a black belt in karate or some shit. And there's all these celebrities that have black belts that they didn't fucking train, but they got this black belt. And it's treated like a celebrity black belt. Every once in a while you get some guys that are legit. But if it's treated like it, that's just what it is. And that's how it'll be handled. So it's really just there's a limit to the value that's given to it. But it's not like because he's a black belt, we're forced to give him all this stuff now. That's not how that works. So it's still going to be him navigating, individual alliances and communications based on the merits and the value of those alliances and communications. But having this external criteria that's supposed to give him access to all these things, that's just not the way it works. It's just not the way it works. So Jamie says the DEI black belt. Well, here's the thing. Even that I'm not saying. Because I don't know what Jake's criteria is. I don't know what it is. Jake Shields is a legitimate elite fighter and martial artist. So, if he says that Derek is qualified, there's no other information I have to go on. I think there's no utility in saying, well, it's probably this, right? So you guys have heard me. If you guys have been listening to me for a while, I'm a big fan and proponent of Bayesian logic, right? This idea of never establishing a complete position based on incomplete information. And to apply that model or framework to this particular situation, it's there's some shit we don't know. We don't know. Oh, yeah, but is he legit? Well, what do you mean by legit? Because legit means a legit black belt gave him his black belt. That's the only criteria for legitimacy that we all have in common. So it's what's the horse in the race, right? Jamie writes, not necessarily to aim at Jake, but the general concept of stolen valor or purchased valor. Yeah, absolutely. And again, if that is the case in this particular situation where, let's say, Moneyberg paid Jake to do it, if that is the case, if that were the case, are those different statements? You know what I mean. Then that would delegitimize, obviously, the respect of the black belt to everybody who does not accept that as a legitimate criterion for getting a black belt. In other words, how do we just take an analytical look at this and just design a sort of formulaic approach of how to process it? It's well, if you have two single guys and there's a girl there and one of them thinks she's ugly and one of them thinks she's pretty, is she ugly or pretty? Both of them are trying to hook up with this girl. The one who thinks she's ugly is probably not going to want to hook up with her. The one who thinks she's pretty is probably going to want to hook up with her. There's a very subjective element to be overlaid over this entire thing that I think all the critics online have absolutely no interest in fleshing out, because they're still of the mindset it's we're all one. We're all one fucking communist cult of fucking cunts. Did I say it out loud? Number 10. He cares more about being seen than being right. So at one point he's asking Moneyberg, Do you think you can get guests without paying them? I've never asked someone to wear something on my show. It's like he presents this as if it's, again, some sort of moral ground that he has. Like paying somebody to be a guest on your show? Like, are you fucking kidding me? That's the criteria you're setting? The ethical criteria for a talk show host is you don't pay somebody? I've never paid somebody to be on my podcast. Why not? Want to know why? Because I ain't got the fucking money to pay people. Back in the day, listen, wife and kids, like, I'm not paying a motherfucker that I probably don't want to talk to in the first place. But if you are doing this as a business, not only do I would say the majority, maybe that's not fair, I would say a great portion of the most popular podcasts that you see online pay guests. Maybe not every guest, but pay guests. But there are some podcasts that you have to pay to be on. I was contacted by two podcasts, very popular podcasts. I'm not going to say who they were. And at some point in the process, like, I got to be honest, it felt kind of good. My ego was a little, massaged, because they were like, hey, really like your stuff. And so we were thinking about having you as a guest. And I'm like, oh, I was, whatever. And then at some point in the process, I'm like, this is a fucking sales funnel that I'm on. Like, they're about to close me on what the appearance fee, like, one person mentioned money. The other one had got right to that point, and I cut it off before it got that point. But it's like, holy shit, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I remember mentioning this to a buddy of mine. He's like, oh, yeah, like, that's one of the things that you do. And I felt like a fucking idiot, because here I am, not even realizing that you could just pay people to get on these popular podcasts. Put it this way, I'm from New York. I always know that most people are one envelope away from doing what you need them to do. But I didn't understand that there was this whole, like, economic model. So where are the ethics on that? So it wouldn't be Ariel saying, I don't pay anybody. It would be a scenario where people were paying Ariel to get us, like, you're literally whoring out the show. Like, maybe a little rough, but you guys understand what I'm saying. So it's really just, it's, again, Helwani trying to make him seem unethical, but in a way that just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Right? Number 11, he says success is unfair when someone does it faster or better. He disguises jealousy as moral judgment. If someone's progress makes him look small, he calls it suspicious. This was an ongoing part of this talk. Where is the quote at one point? And he's talking about the 3.5 years, a little more than 3.5 years, whatever it was. He says, 3.5 years, you could surely understand why that rings some alarms. And this accusatory, perspective that he's questioning from, not only is it disrespectful, but it doesn't get to the heart of what any answers would specifically be of worth or of value. Because if he were to ask Moneyberg to just explain why his criteria differs from the more communally accepted online criteria, right? The online, there is a community of online cunts, but the schools, like, there's not a jiu-jitsu community. No, there's a bunch of people that participate in the jiu-jitsu culture online. If you don't know somebody, they're not in your fucking community. If you don't have a direct connection to somebody, they're not in your community. So there is no community thing. But if you were to ask Moneyberg why his process is valid when compared to other processes, that's a fair question. At which point Moneyberg would have the opportunity to say, well, I'm not trying to be a world champion. I'm not trying to be somebody that competes. I'm somebody that wants to just portray an understanding of what my instructor considers to be a black belt level of understanding. Like, there's a way to explain it, but obviously there's no excitement to that. There's no, drama and controversy in doing that. So what did he do instead? He suggests that, you know, it's almost like he's trying to get Moneyberg to admit, come on, you know you're full of shit, right? You know, there was like that underlying theme the entire time. 12. There's 14 of these. I got to push through. Holy shit, it's getting late. I'm losing my voice. Number 12. He hides behind we're all equal to avoid feeling inadequate. Instead of leveling himself up, he tries to pull others down. Equality becomes his excuse for mediocrity. So when I first started designing this, I'm like, okay, if somebody has no idea about who Helwani and Moneyberg are, or they don't even train martial arts, how can I make this relevant? And it's really these observations that we see displayed in this particular situation that could illustrate the slave mindset versus the master mindset that I'm always talking about. And here there is something to be said for somebody who wants equality to be the priority, right? So where's the quote I got for this? He says, well, you know, you're in the discussion with BJ Penn and Kyle Terra. You know, you can understand why people question that, right? So BJ Penn, like 3 years black belt. Kyle Terra got his in 3 years also, I think. So he's saying, you know, it's a false equivalency. It's like, well, if they got in 3 years, you got in 3 years. Obviously, you know, you're in the conversation with them. It's like, well, no, only if the criteria is black belts in 3 years. But they're known for being world champions, those guys, competitively. They're not known for just having a rank. There's a friend of mine, long time, one of the best American practitioners, Mike Fowler. Mike Fowler, when did he get his black belt? I want to say it was 3 or 4 years. Anybody you guys watching, like if you know how long it took for Mike Fowler to get his black belt. But he's another one. Mike Fowler was an incredible competitor. But even though he got his black belt, fuck, how long? Should I look it up? I'm going to look it up. Unless you guys, this is why I need a producer. Fucking white boy Pat. Getting a fucking family. Fucking running his business successfully. He's got some fucking nerve. How long did it take for Mike Fowler to get his black belt? 3.5 years. Mike Fowler got 3.5 years. So how come it's okay for Mike Fowler to do it and Helwani didn't get after something like that? Because he was a fucking competitor. So the only reason he's getting after Moneyberg is because Moneyberg's not a competitor. But then it implies that in order to get a black belt, you need to be a competitor. It's like some people never compete. Who's considered the best instructor in the world of jiu-jitsu these days? John Danaher. I don't know if John Danaher ever did a competition. Of course, there are the stories of him fucking people up. And obviously, Danaher, I'm sure, was a fucking problem back in the day. I'm from New York, and he was training at Henzo's. I heard plenty about his ability to be effective on the mat. But he never won any competitions. So if we're talking about competitions, maybe he shouldn't be a black belt. The thing is, when you make these hard, fast rules, these uncompromising rules, they just don't hold up to reality. Number 13. He assumes respect can be bought. I think it's the same quote I used in the other one. Would it be unfair to hypothesize that he gave you a black belt just because you pay him well? And again, I'm fucking redundant, so I won't spend too much time on this, but it implies that Jake Shields is such a, slimy piece of shit that he's one fucking check away from a black belt. It's like, what belt do you want? Right? Like whenever I would have a student ask me for a belt, I would tell them, just go and buy one. Go and get it. Oh, so you're promoting? No. Don't say I gave it to you. But if you want a belt, go and get the belt. I think I told that to that brown belt too back in the day. It's like, go get one. Put it on. It ain't for me. Don't tell anybody it's for me. But I don't give a fuck if you wear a belt. I saw a video where an instructor said that I think it was a video like where a visiting student came from another school and he wore a blue belt, which is the second belt in jiu-jitsu at this other school. And he tried to get the instructor at the second school to like take a picture with him, and he was going to play it off like that other instructor gave him that blue belt. Like, yeah, that's some scumbag shit right there. But for me, like, I didn't even let other students train and join at my school if they were on bad terms with their instructor. Like, there were people who, like, especially in the MMA world, you know, regionally, my MMA team had done well. And I had a lot of students from other teams say, oh, I want to join your team. I want to train with you. It's like, go fuck yourself. Here's your coach who I know fucking sacrifices for you every day of his life, and fuck him. Now, there's some people that are saying, yeah, well, you know, this is the game. That's fine. And again, this speaks to my point, supports my point. Everybody has their own criteria. I don't train people that are disloyal cocksuckers. I don't care how fucking good they are. I don't care if they have UFC talent, world championship talent. I don't give a fuck. None of it means anything to me. If you don't train with integrity and you don't train in a way that's congruent with the criteria that I set, I have no fucking use for you. Your ability to win or not win doesn't mean anything. How much money you give me doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. So to suggest that on this one that Jake Shields, oh, you just paid him, right? It's like you don't understand the disrespect to Jake Shields. Now I will say, and I tried not to bring this up, but fucking whatever. If you're still watching after an hour and 17 minutes, like, you deserve it. Jake Shields, very critical of Israel. Very critical of Israel. Not a fan. So, Ariel Helwani, fan of Israel. Is that playing a role in a motivation for some of this? I'll let you decide. Last one. He believes popularity outranks mastery. Here's a quote. When I go on your Instagram, and then he explains that he has all these followers and then all these comments, that would suggest to me that a lot of those likes are bought. Here's the thing about the internet. If you think that on Instagram, I'll use that platform as an example, that everybody that is successful on Instagram does not have purchased followers, likes, and comments, then you are naive. Do not allow, and this is me being a little, instructive than suggestive, but I would instruct you to not allow your morality and your criteria for measuring the value of a man to be how congruently they abide by the terms of social media platforms. To say that, Moneyberg is a fraud because he purchased likes or followers on that is to just ignore the system that everybody you think is doing well in social media is following. Are there organic ways of promoting, what it is you do? Obviously, absolutely. For my coaching business, I don't pay for ads. Every, business coach that I hired was always like, hey, you gotta pay for ads. Like, you should really, and I'm just like, I just want to grow organically. Not that I'll never pay for ads, but it's my thing. I want to grow organically. So I don't pay for traffic. But do I use filters? Do I use AI? When you look at how to generate organic growth on social media platforms, you think everybody's not buying followers or comments or likes? You think that when somebody has a high number and they say it's not purchased or engineered, you think that makes them more legitimate or more valuable Like it takes a little bit, maybe it's not as complicated as I'm making it out to be, but I would think that it takes a little bit of nuance. You have to meditate on this a little bit to understand just how devious social media platforms are with the algorithms that they're using. I was informed the other day that the US government was shut down. Democrats, Republicans, this whole thing. I will tell you right now, with absolute certainty, I have no idea if that's still the case. I don't pay attention to that. Those aren't the things I'm connected to. How many of the things that you get fired up about are a direct result of what you've been exposed to on social media? You are being naive if you think that that is not engineered. Every single time, remember, I made a show a couple of weeks ago, months ago, whenever, about outrage. It's like, why are you getting outraged? What is all this outrage about? And if you are getting outraged, who made you outraged? Are the circumstances engineered? Are you somebody taking a stand? Or are you somebody like Sonny in The Godfather getting shot down in the causeway because you had a predictable, anticipated, and therefore engineered response? It's just a different way to be. All right, guys. Holy shit. We went a long time. 14 points about that show. I should probably put the link to their show in the description. I probably won't. But it's the Ariel Helwani show. He had Derek Moneyberg on. I covered a bunch of points. That's my take, and I'm sticking to it. If you guys are not getting the email, you guys know, masterjimletter.com. Go there. I appreciate you guys. My voice is almost gone. I will see you guys next Wednesday, same time. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.